Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Walk on Wednesday. Walk on Wednesday is the day of the week that before we get into the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find someone who we feel is doing something cool with their life or has some cool stories to tell, and we give them 10 minutes to talk about what's going on. And we've been doing, for the last few weeks, we've had His Holiness Mukunda Goswami. He's a very cool a teenager, a young 20s jazz musician in the Lower East Side of New York. And he met a Swami in 1965, maybe 1966. And he got very serious about his spiritual life. And he's been telling us what it was like living with the Swami, taking care of the Swami, how the Swami took care of him, in the beginning of the Bhakti movement flourishing in the United States. So first we want to welcome Mukunda Goswami, but before we get there, we have a few announcements, and then we're going to dive right into that, and then we're going to dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Any announcements, Mara?
Yeah, Trevor Vaughn is offering an asana class for our Patreon members at 8 a.m. today.
Okay.
There's Bhakti Recovery Group meetings at 1 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then part 4 of your Ramayana class at 7:30 tonight.
Yeah, the Ramayana class is going pretty well. We've got like a bunch of people showing up live. I think it's going to be kept up, Mara. Is that true? For about a week on Patreon? That's right. But it's for Patreon members. If you want to join that, Patreon members, Mara sends out that link. And yeah, tonight we're going to do, I can't remember. I can't remember what's happening. It's something. Rama's forces invading Lanka. Exciting. Hanuman, the monkeys, Ram, Vibhishan surrenders. It's a good part of the Ramayana. We have a really great group doing it. It's so beautiful to see the morning Zoomers and then showing up for the evening at the same time. I feel like I'm waking with you guys and going to sleep with you guys. And then also you see all these others out there that are just listening in that you know, it's like they're out there. Those others are out there. They're listening, but you never hear from them. And then they show up, some new face. It's sort of exciting. And it's a real great way to wind down your evening. And that's how they did in the old days, you know. You wake up in the morning, you hear some sacred literature. It makes your mind peaceful. It recalibrates your brain. And then in the evening, you wind yourself down with these stories that are both entertaining and enlightening. It's just a sweet way to wind up your night. So I'll see you tonight at 7:30. Kaustubha, any announcements before we dive in?
No, I'm ready to dive in. Eager.
Mukunda Maharaj, welcome. Thank you for coming back again. We're so happy to have you. And I know where you are in Australia is flooded and your internet is sort of sketchy, and you're doing this anyway. Thank you so much.
Well, I have to apologize for the darkness of where I am because it's nighttime here, and I have a very kind of diminutive lighting system. Anyway, I'm going to tell a little about my relations with Prabhupada before the first temple was established at 26 Second Avenue. So one of the things that happened was that Prabhupada was seemed to be having a dispute with the 18-year-old guy that he was living with, and he came to my place. And with his suitcase, he had abandoned the loft that he lived in, and he said that the person was what he called ill-naming him, was his very, very diminutive and gentle way of saying that he was swearing. And I said, well, what's I was thinking, well, what is a little swearing, what's the big deal? Why is he leaving just because the guy was swearing at him? And then he told a little parable. He said that he was sitting on a couch next to me, and the parable was that you take a spiritual master, you sit across from him, and then you kill him, and you move his dead body aside, and then you sit in his place, and then you become the guru. And I was thinking to myself, well, what's he saying? Is he saying that this guy is capable of something like murder? And I realized at that point that it was actually a very serious situation, that he was a little bit crazed. Maybe it was, I learned later, it was probably from taking too much of a hallucination, that he thought he was whatever he thought. I don't know. But anyway, Prabhupada was kind of homeless. And I realized that he was kind of thinking that maybe he could stay at my place, because my place was a little bit better and well furnished. But it was also full of musical instruments like drums and a bass and a vibra-harp and a piano and stuff like that. So, and I was thinking I didn't want to be a sold out slave like the guy that he lived with. So I very tactfully changed the subject. And what happened was Prabhupada took up residence a few parallel streets over on Center Street in Lower Manhattan. And lived there for about 3 or 4 days. But I realized that he needed a place that was more accessible by the ordinary people. So I went to a newsstand, and I determined it was the first newsstand that a newspaper called the Village Voice came out in. And I got one that was hot off the press. And I looked on the want ads, and there was an advertisement for 26 2nd Avenue. So I phoned the phone number. I was in a phone booth, and I made an appointment with the rental agent, a Mr. Gardiner. And the appointment was with Mr. Gardiner and Prabhupada and my friend that was in the other Center Street loft. So on one warm day in May, I rode my bicycle to that location and tied it to a parking meter. It was gone the next day. It's a very crime-ridden part of the world, Lower Manhattan.
You tied it? You tied up your bicycle?
Yeah, I locked it with a chain, and it was gone that was gone a few hours later. Anyways, we went inside the former curio shop called Matchless Gifts and sat with the rental agent, Prabhupada, and this friend of mine. And he said that I'll rent this to you. It's going to cost you $100 per month, which was a pretty low price. And then I looked at my friend, and we kind of nodded our heads. Well, we could manage that. We could get that together. And then the rental agent said that he had another place in the same building across the way across a little courtyard. It was on the 2nd floor, or one floor up, as they say in the United Kingdom, the 1st floor, but it was actually on the 2nd floor, according to the US. And it was a pretty well-appointed, clean apartment. It had a lounge, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. And we kind of looked at each other and thought $80 a month is a pretty reasonable amount. We can get that together. And we nodded our heads.
It's a pretty good rent for New York.
And the next a few days, and an interesting thing was that the storefront became a kind of a temple. It was kind of a bare, there was nothing there. I mean, the people that were there had moved out. And very soon, the devotees brought carpets, they brought paintings, and it had the look of an oriental, and tapestries, and it had the look of a temple. And I brought my tambura, which was an very exotic looking Indian instrument. And Prabhupada started lecturing there, coming down from his flat, his apartment, 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And lo and behold, a number of the Lower East Side denizens, or hippies as they called themselves, in respect of their friends from Haight-Ashbury, started sleeping in that storefront. I don't know what they used for a bathroom, but it was just a bare room with a little pewter sink in the corner. One day, so I started going to that. It wasn't, I started walking there early in the morning. It's one of the times of day when Manhattan is sort of, like semi-civilized. Early in the morning. It was like at 6 o'clock, something like that. And Prabhupada used to lecture every day. And he had come to my house, fortunately, and I got that by Krishna's grace. I got a place for him that was the 26th Second Avenue, and that is the place where it all began. But I told Prabhupada that I was leaving very soon for the West Coast, for California, and I heard him as I was walking out of the room. I heard him say, "Just try to start a center on the West Coast." So that sort of rang in my mind. I thought, well, it's just a fantasy of an old man. I'm never going to see him again, and I'm not going to try to start a center. But what happened when I got to the West Coast, that thought was ringing in my mind, and that is exactly what happened. I rented a storefront on Frederick Street on the cusp of the Haight-Ashbury, and that became a temple, and it looked like the New York temple. It had a carpet. It had paintings on the wall, and people were very happy to contribute. They made a sign called Radha Krishna Temple on the outside that looked like Sanskrit letters painted in gold on a red background. And I constructed a little pedestal for Prabhupada, a stand for him to read his books from. And I rented an apartment for him just about a block away. And that became like the second temple, and every once in a while I would telephone the devotees in New York and tell them what we were doing, and they thought we were very radical, that we were hanging out with hippies, and that it wasn't a proper thing for Prabhupada to be in a place like that. But Prabhupada seemed to like the whole thing, even though it was sort of an interesting thing. And one thing he did with Mr. Gardner is he said that Mike and my friend were subscribed members, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And what he said was, I can make you a subscriber member. And Mr. Gardner was kind of flattered. He didn't know what to say or think, and Prabhupada had books, and he said, I'm going to give you these books as a token of my appreciation if you will become a charter member. So instead of paying $100 for the rent, if you become a charter member, we'll only charge you $15, so it'll be $85. And he thought a minute, and then he looked at the books, and he looked at Prabhupada, and he looked at the rest of us, and he said, okay, I'll agree to that. And so the $100 became $85, and the apartment was available. So Prabhupada moved in. And then just a few days later, I left for the West Coast. That was in May or June, and I left for the West Coast in November and started a temple there. And I was going to go to India, and I thought, well, I'll learn the Indian flute when I go to India. And Prabhupada immediately asked me what I did. And I said, well, I played the piano, the keyboard. And he said, well, I can teach you how to play the piano for Krishna. So I very tactfully changed the subject, because I thought, piano, no way could I learn how to play the piano for Krishna. Flute, maybe, but piano, no way. So as I was walking out, I heard him say, just try to start a temple. And that actually happened, that I turned my tickets to India in. I was going to go to India. And I decided to stay in San Francisco, and it was a very exciting and happening place, because it had become the mecca for the young people to create a so-called revolution in the United States. They were people that were dissatisfied with the way of life of their fathers and grandfathers, so they kind of came to us in droves. And then sometimes there were 40 or 50 people in that temple, and there was a great feast that Prabhupada had trained the devotees how to cook, and we rented a stove. And the whole thing was like, there were a lot of volunteers that were helping. They just wanted something different to do. And then in probably it was about August, I left for England, and I just heard about the Hare Krishna movement expanding. When I was in the West Coast, I got a letter from Prabhupada saying that he had hosted a famous poet called Allen Ginsberg. He was a very famous beatnik poet. And then for the first time, I got this letter and a clipping from the New York Times that mentioned Ginsberg. And I thought that, well, this is becoming a movement, because I really thought that it was just an elderly Indian man in a Second Avenue. I didn't think it was ever going to amount to anything, but that's what happened. And when he first came to England, it was a couple of days after the Hare Krishna mantra record became famous. And the plane landed on the tarmac in Heathrow Airport, And Prabhupada went through the customs formalities by a man who had come out to the aircraft, and he didn't have to wait in a line. And it was a very smooth operation. And he came into the VIP room and spoke. And there were about 6 devotees there. And then the Fleet Street men converged on him. The Fleet Street men were the elderly newspaper men. Fleet Street was the street where all the newspapers were located. And they all converged on him, and they looked kind of mean and stern. And I thought, oh, this is the end of that. The nice, blissful greeting for Prabhupada. And the first thing they asked him was, what have you come here to teach? In a kind of challenging voice. And Prabhupada paused for a moment, and then he said, I've come to teach you what you've all forgotten. That is God. And then he went on to speak. And for the first time, I saw that these people, these nervous and very challenging reporters were stumped. They really didn't know what to do or what to say. So that was Prabhupada's first visit to England after about 13 months of pounding the streets looking for a temple. We finally found one, and Prabhupada himself graciously came because we didn't send for him until we found something central. And meanwhile, I was monitoring all the movements of the temples in the United States, and the Hare Krishna explosion had begun at that time. But I was monitoring it all the way from England, and I thought, well, we'll do something adventurous, different in England. So that's my story for today, and I'll keep in contact with you for an ongoing report of what happened in England.
Wow. It's like insider
So
info.
I'll be in contact with you guys, Ray and Kaustubha, to tell you what the next phase of the adventure eventuated, what happened.
Thank you so much, Marsh. And we want to remind everyone that to find out more about this, the best place to go is outofthisworldstudios.org, which is a website that Mukunda Goswami has put together to share a lot of this and other information too. But it's a beautiful website with a lot of fascinating information there that you just can't get anywhere else. And also his book should be read too, right? It's such a nice account of those early
Out of This
days,
World org is the name of the website. outofthisworld.org,
Yeah.
and the book is called Miracle on Second.
Is it Out of This World or Out of This World Studios?
Out of This World Studios.
Out of This World
But
Studios.
if you just type in Out of This World, it'll probably get to it. But the official name is Out of This World Studios.org.
Okay.
So thank you again, and I wish you all a very happy day, for whether it's day or night. All the best. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you so much.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Maharaj. I love this. Wow. This is incredible. It's insider information. And wasn't it cute? He called me Ray. Did you pick up on that?
I didn't pick up.
I think
I guess that's how I knew you originally.
Maybe he knew me originally as Ray
Yeah.
when I was.
Yeah, Ray of today.
I met him in the early days, so maybe he does know. Just remember me as Ray.
Early day. You know what I was thinking was, when we first got into all of this, it was like the time that at that point we're much closer to the time that he's talking about than we are now to that point. In other words, like let's say we're hanging out in the Lower East Side, like say 81. That was like 15 years past what he's describing now. Now it's 40 years past that time.
Right.
So like all the things that he's talking about, like the Village Voice. You remember like getting the Village Voice like on a Wednesday
remember
night.
If you wanted to get an apartment, you had to wait up late at night in New York City till the Village Voice came out, and everybody knew exactly where the first Village Voices came out.
Yeah.
And you would go there for an apartment, and then you'd look through that was like a real New York insider thing that he mentioned.
Yeah. Anyway, so many of the things he was talking about, I could tell you a story. I mean, anyway, it's just funny, but he was talking about his bike getting stolen, but it really was, New York was like that. Like it was like everything, like bicycles in particular, you had to lock them down like so heavy or get immediately stolen. And I was thinking in the story, once I was like in 2000, I moved to Boston for like a year.
Yeah.
And I got this bicycle. And, I was used to always riding my bike in New York. I liked it. And I had this bicycle, and I was going to spend like a week in New York or something. And I took the bus down to New York, and I took my bicycle. And I realized that I better get a lock for the seat. Like you need a chain to lock the seat to the rest of the bike, or someone else will steal the seat. And so I went to a store.
Yeah.
I locked the bike up outside the store. I went in to buy a chain for the seat. I came out, my seat was stolen.
Yeah.
But that was New York.
No, New York. That was just New York. And then I remember the first time me and Paramananda we had a show in Sweden. And we were shocked as we pulled up to the club because there was hundreds of mountain bikes unlocked. Now, if you have an unlocked mountain bike in New York, that means you're giving the bike away.
It's a donation.
So we're like, it's unbelievable. They don't steal here. They don't steal.
Anyway, Maharaj's book is called Miracle on Second Avenue. But if you really want to get into the details of all of this, it's a great book to read.
Mm. You know what's another interesting thing about 26 Second Avenue? Because we were like the next generation of the Lower East Side. Because that's where, in the same way he hung out there and met devotees, met Prabhupada, we hung out there. I guess that was 20 years later, right? 20 years.
Well, 15 to 20 years later. Yeah.
20 years later. And then we met devotees, but the 26 Second Avenue had become, of course, the Krishna movement expanded, and that storefront became like an antique shop. And they called it, do you know the name, what they called it? Which I think was really interesting.
No, Raghunath, it was called that before, like even before. No.
Prabhupada. It was called Matchless Gifts before.
Okay, they changed it?
But then after Prabhupada left and they moved to big temples, then some antique shop moved in there. Okay. Do you know what the name of the antique shop was?
I don't remember.
Very interesting name.
I bet.
Rescued Estates.
Right, Rescued
Isn't
Estates.
that cool? Because I remember before I was a devotee, I was like, oh, that's where the original Krishna temple was. How cool. It's called Rescued Estates. And then in the 90s, it came up for availability again. Yeah. And the devotees rented it out. It's almost like a museum, etc.
All right.
Well, all right. Let's get into the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay.
Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet.
All right.
Mara.
Reading from Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 34.
Text 34.
Alrighty.
Are we on 34 already?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you know what this is, Raghunath?
What?
This is that we discussed that we had the same advice came earlier in Bhagavatam. I think it may have been, was it Kapila Day speaking to Devahuti?
Yes.
Right. And then also, it's reflecting, it's similar to instructions found in Yoga Sutras. Yeah,
Nectar of instruction.
How to relate with different people. This is
how do you relate to different people?
How do you relate? Yeah.
We're all different. We're all different.
It's true. We are all different. You just have to be careful how far you take that. Doesn't mean you can just pronounce any words anyway. We are all different. That's true. But language.
The ongoing theme this week. All right. I'm sorry. Let's get into this. Thank you, Bunky. Okay. Bunky's coming to India. Do you know that?
I know. I know.
We're going to India for a few days only.
Okay.
And then we're going to Nepal. I'm excited.
So Narada's speaking to little Dhruva.
Narada's speaking to little Dhruva. He's just
sage,
a little boy.
Sage advice.
Every man should act like this. when he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified himself, he should be compassionate towards him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of the material world. Now, this is very interesting because materialistic mindset is extremely the opposite of this. Here it says when you meet someone who is, when you meet someone more qualified, you should be pleased. So the materialistic person they're envious of the people more qualified. They're trying to take them down. They're looking for faults. They're trying to get above them so they can assert their authority. And when they meet someone less qualified, instead of being compassionate, this is a very common. And by the way, if these like very dark qualities that I'm explaining are in you, that's okay. We just have to recognize them. And when we are in a position of power, instead of being compassionate to those underneath us, we lord it over them. We grind them into the dirt. We let them know who's in charge. And of course, when there's someone of equal stature, instead of making friendship with them, what we do is we compete with them. We want to like one up them. So this is saying how a saintly person should think. We're all trying to develop our saintly qualities, which are not even, we say saintly qualities. What we're talking about is we're trying to act externally what the soul is like internally.
Line it up. Line it up. Get it all lined up. Integrity.
Get it all lined up. Otherwise, my ego is acting one way, and my soul is like, this isn't the way I move in this world.
There's a conflict, tension.
There's a conflict
internal,
between the soul and the ego.
Yeah.
We're trying to get it to be a very smooth dance between the two.
Smooth dance. Yeah, I like that. You know, and what he's saying here is it's not even like this is some kind of moral or societal, is that a word? It's, you know, like some pressure, some social pressure, right? Like to conform to particular etiquette, particular guidelines for the sake of whatever, you know, like who knows, you know, for the sake of it's just we've always done it that way, or for the sake of we're trying to keep you in your place. It's not like that. He's speaking from a point of view of compassion, and he's saying, I'm looking at you and I'm seeing how much distress you're feeling, right? Like I see how you're suffering. I want to share with you a formula to help relieve that suffering, right? It's saying, and if you can learn to relate to people like this, then you won't be affected by the miseries of this world. So think about it, right? Because, I guess the question could be, here's the question, Raghunath, right? Mm-hmm. How does this relate to how Dhruva responded to his circumstances?
How does this relate to the way Dhruva responded to his circumstances?
In other words, how Dhruva related, say, to his stepbrother, how Dhruva related to his father, how Dhruva related to his stepmother.
So,
right? Like,
when the mother says something, there should be some type of reasonable respect. When the brother is the brother is like of an equal, you know, and that's where I'm taking this.
Yeah,
right? Am I in the right ballpark?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could look at it different ways. Like in one sense, the stepmother actually needs compassion here, right? Because she's she's got such a problematic mentality, right?
Sure.
That it's almost like the response should be like, it's okay, you know. If you say I can't sit on that lap, I'm all right with that, you know. It's like, you know.
We read this.
Yeah.
Last night we read I told the story of Ram leaving home. He was banished by his stepmother, Kay, due to her bad association.
There you go.
And Ram's mood was, well, okay, you want me to go? Sure. When would you like me to leave? And she said immediately. And he says, okay, mother, if that's what you like. If you'd like to banish me to the forest for 14 years, okay, mom. He was like completely equipoise.
Perfect. Like a counter example, right? And everyone was trying to tell him, hey, this isn't unfair and you should be fighting back, right?
Yeah.
People were telling Ram. Did that come up in the details of what you read last?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Ram's about to get everything. He's about to inherit a kingdom. Yeah. He's about to inherit the
The throne.
the granaries and the army and the treasury.
Especially that granary, you know.
Granary. Oh, it's gonna get a granary. My father left me a granary in the will.
Yeah, so everything was about to land on his plate, right?
And he was
what to speak of
okay.
fame and all of that, you know,
Power,
prestige,
probably
power,
a cool crown.
wealth,
Probably a really cool crown.
very cool crown, and now he was being forced unfairly for no good reason, for no justifiable reason. He was being forced to take off the clothes of the prince or the king, right? Put on tree bark, right?
Tree bark. By
they
the
wear
way,
these tree bark
someone
outfits.
told me recently when they talk about tree bark, it's not like they're just stripping an oak tree and just like wearing it around like people used to wear like a barrel. It's,
Yeah, it's this rough, like a barrel. Is that what you would think?
I think it's like a.
Did people
you ever
used
see
to
the
wear
guy, like,
barrels?
wearing a barrel
In the
around
cartoons,
them?
I think they did. Yeah, in the,
I don't
with
know
two
if people
straps.
did that or where that came from, but there was a particular type of tree bark that would
like
sort
a
of mold to the body. That
silky
you,
or something
what's
like that? I think it was like silky or something like that. You know,
I don't know if it was silky.
it's something
But-
like that. I used to know about this, but I forgot.
Right?
Exactly.
It's a thing. It's a thing. It's a type of bark.
Yeah. And so in any case, the point being is that he had everything coming to him from a materialistic point of view. That's like the doors opening to greater happiness, you know, and he was going to have it on such a high level. Naturally, for most people, the mind would become very attached to this idea, right?
Yeah.
But that attachment is what causes the suffering. That's the suffering that Dhruva is going through right now. You know, if Dhruva had Ram's mentality, if Dhruva had Ram's depth of realization, he would have been like, "Oh, no problem."
Yeah.
You know? But he didn't, and so therefore he suffered.
I know that feeling, Kaustubha. Have you ever heard about my biggest
Granary?
letdown in life?
When you didn't get the granary, when you didn't get the big wheel, what was it?
No, you don't know what it is, huh? I don't even know if Paramananda knows this one.
Okay,
My biggest letdown
share.
in the material world, I will share right now. It still hurts me
tell.
to this day. It's when you're expecting something is going to come, some position, some type of accolade, some type of an appreciation for what you're doing and taking on a new level. I was promised to be the drum major of the marching band.
Oh man, what an honor!
What
a position
out
of
here.
prestige.
Hear me out. It was. We had a very good marching band. Hear me out here.
Okay.
I even went to, this is going to sound nerdy. I even went to drum major camp.
That sounds very nerdy. How old are you? Pull it together,
We've
Raghunath.
lost him.
Pull it together. Well, Bunky, what's going inside his drink every morning?
I went to drum major camp. And after I got out of the camp,
Yeah.
the leader of, the teacher of organized the band, he got fired. They got a new guy in and they didn't pick me.
So in other
And I
words, you
was
went to camp
devastated.
for the purpose of coming back and being the drum major. You thought like that was your ticket.
Everybody was expecting me to be the drum major, and I got undermined. So I was like Ram, but Ram was equipoise. He bowed down. I quit. I quit the band.
Okay.
Was so hurt.
Was there some scene where in a huff you stormed off and you spoke your mind?
No, I just silently quit. I silently quit. I quit band. I quit orchestra. I quit everything. So I was in orchestra too. Anything that had to do with the new guy. I'm just sharing this. It's humiliating to share, but that was my biggest letdown. I was not equipoise. I was bitter. I'm still a little bitter.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Well, the thing is this: again, it's not that Narda is trying to force some kind of some kind of etiquette on him to keep him in his place, to hold him down, right? It's to free him, right? That if you can learn to, and when we think about, we live in a world where there's so little trust, where like those people that are like our elders, they're hypocrites. Sometimes they're a little sadistic. My wife was telling me about how she grew up in these schools in Sri Lanka, like international school in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And they'd have like these British teachers, and they were just mean. Like they actually sadistically
Teachers were allowed to be mean in the old days.
Yeah, it was like sadistically would really humiliate the children. you know? And so we put up these barriers, you know, like we feel that we need. We feel the need just to maintain our self-esteem in a sense, right? We feel the need to like drag everyone down. Everyone's on one level. I'm not going to recognize, you know, hierarchies or like that. But really what's the idea here is that in a healthy society, you can recognize, you know, who's who. And by showing these types of respect or compassion or friendship, what it does is it opens up the channels, you know, for like a substantial exchange to take place, you know, an exchange of knowledge, an exchange of wisdom, an exchange of ultimately of love, right? That you keep those channels open so that for instance, elderly people, if they've lived in a healthy society and they lived a healthy life, they should have wisdom to share, right? And if respect is shown to them, then they say, oh, this person, they're acting so respectful to me. What can I do for them? What can I do? You know, what can I share with them that'll be helpful for them? You know, and so that compassion is flowing. You open up that channel for it all. So it's opening up the channels for positive exchange, and it's keeping one detached enough so that they don't suffer the way that Dhruva is suffering right now, the way that poor Raghunath suffered.
By the way, I didn't get that much love on the message board either, too. I just spilled my heart to everybody, and they were just like, whatever, next, please.
You know,
Back to the Bhagavatam, squirrel boy.
Maybe they've been through more difficult challenges in life. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Okay.
You know, it's a common thing. If I feel insecure about myself, then when I get a position of power, I want to flex that power. And when you hang out with devotees, they don't do that. When you hang out with people practicing spiritual life, the first thing they say, even an equal, will be, "Oh, Prabhu, you know, by your mercy, please let me serve you. What can I get for you?" And you're thinking, "Oh, come on." It's like the opposite of what the materialist does. Materialist is trying to cut people down, criticize, be snarky, rude, sharp. And the devotee is sort of like, "What can I?" They're building you up. They're not trying to take you down. It's a very sweet culture.
Very sweet.
It's a very sweet culture.
Now, speaking of this culture, so Narada, he was the senior, right? He's speaking to a little boy. He's sharing good advice, right? He's spoken truth. He's spoken good advice that potentially could be accepted and be life-changing. But Dhruva's he's gonna give a very honest response, a respectful response, but a very honest response. He's not just gonna say, "Okay, you're right, thank you," and move on. He's gonna actually bring up exactly, you know, in a very honest way, how that advice sinks in with him. All right. Text 35. Yeah.
Dhruva Maharaj said, so this is Dhruva Maharaj. Well, they call him Maharaj, but he's a little kid. He's a prince. "My dear Lord Naradaji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart." So he's going to get right. It's a little bit.
Everything you're saying makes a lot of sense, but where I'm at emotionally right now is just like, it's just going right past me.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but no thank you. Thank you, but no thank you. Yeah. "My dear Lord," he's calling Narada Lord. "My dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in this Kshatriya or warrior family, right? My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart." Right? He's a little bitter. He's a little resentful. He's a little angry.
Yeah. He recognizes the value of what's being said, but he's also in a very honest way saying, you know what? I almost wish I could accept that, but let's get real here. There's the ideal and there's the real, and this is the reality, right? And now, if that instruction can't stand in his heart, well, then what will stand in his heart?
Well, the interesting thing is, it's not that he's going to sulk off in bitterness and bury his pain in drugs and alcohol and video games. He's going to say, "Okay, I'm bitter, but I'm going to approach the Supreme Lord to rectify my situation."
Well, although that's what ultimately happens, although his intention was just to win,
Well,
at
that's what I
first,
meant.
right?
Rectify my
Yeah.
situation, like in revenge.
Okay.
But by approaching the Supreme Lord, he's
So
going to
he's not
become
in a
purified.
tamasic state of mind, but he's in a rajasic state of mind, right? He's
Sure.
like a tamasic response would have been like, I hate the world and I'm just going to sleep.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
going to
do-
slash my mom's tires, my
Yeah,
stepmother's
right.
tires, or
Yeah, and so this
of her
is
chariot.
a
That made no sense.
sattvic response would have been like, I don't need that to be happy. Everything's fine. I'm content. But this is a rajasic response. I will, I will show them, right? I need something more than I have right now. I'm going to go out and get it. So,
Have you ever slashed anybody's tires, Kaustubha?
No, I'm not a tire slasher.
Okay.
But so the mother, so this instruction, he's saying, I can't hold it in my heart. Now he's going to reveal his heart, right? What it is that he really wants deep down.
Okay. My dear Lord. Okay.
No,
37.
learned Brahmana.
O learned Brahmana, I want to occupy a position more exalted than any yet achieved within the three worlds by anyone, even my father and my great-grandfather, even by my father and my grandfather. If you will oblige, kindly advise me of an honest path to follow by which I can achieve the goal of my life. Pretty focused kid.
Very focused.
Some kids are very focused.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah,
is
like
no ordinary
little
child.
Karuna, she's just learning shlokas,
Yeah, she's going to learn
Take an
shlokas.
occasional somersault, but then right back on the shlokas.
Yeah, occasionally build a little fort, hide in it, have lunch in there, and then back to her studying.
That's right.
The sage Maitreya continued. The great personality Narada Muni, upon hearing the words of Dhruva Maharaj.
Hold it. You skipped one
Skip a
again.
verse.
Yeah. 38.
My dear Lord, you are a worthy son of Lord Brahma. Right, he's talking to Narada. And you travel, playing on your musical instrument, the veena, for the welfare of the entire universe. You are like the sun, which rotates in the universe for the benefit of all living beings.
Wow. Beautiful.
Narada's still alive. He's still floating around singing. He's the original kirtan leader. I would love to see him one day.
You will, Raghunath. You will.
I hope so.
Sooner than you think.
Bunky's singing in the background, like Narada in a high-pitched voice. Okay, the sage Maitreya continued. The great personality Narada Muni, upon hearing the words of Dhruva Maharaj, became very compassionate towards him, and in order to show him causeless mercy, he gave him the following expert advice.
Okay. You know what? You know what I'm thinking right now, Raghunath?
What?
Is that Narada, in one sense, is far more spiritually advanced. He has more knowledge. He has more detachment than Dhruva does. And he's recognized Dhruva's problem, and he's come forward with a solution. And Dhruva said, I'm sorry, but I just can't accept that. So Narada could have said, well, you're not willing to take the medicine? All right, I'm moving on. Right?
Right. This is the mercy, right? Now, this is the compassion of Narada you're about to explain.
Well, yeah, it's definitely the compassion. Like, in other words, he wasn't like, okay, kid, well, and I'm out of here. Like, how dare you not, appreciate what I'm offering. But even beyond that, what I'm pointing at is how this spiritual tradition isn't like all or nothing, but it recognizes where people are at, and it's ready to prescribe the next step for them, right? It's not kind of like either you accept this and you're saved, or you don't and you go to hell. It's like, well, here's the ideal practice for you, and it's like, well, I'm not capable of practicing that. I might try, but I won't be able to maintain it. Okay, then let me find something that's suitable for you to take your next step. Right?
Yeah, this is also like the Ramayana, right? When
The what?
the Ramayana
Oh, yeah.
is like that. When Narada gave the mantra to Ratnakar to chant Mara, Mara, Mara instead of Rama, Rama, Rama. The guru knows how much to give, right? So he's not going to walk away. He's going to give him something, and the disciple is not even understanding about the purifying process that's going on, but the guru is expert at giving just enough so the disciple can make advancement. So I think that, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that in one sense, this is how you practice spirituality. Is you should always be thinking, what's the next step, right? Like if you just say, oh my God, I'm reading these books about these people with these incredibly devotional lives and incredibly deep realizations, incredible detachment and incredible, devotion. And it just seems so many miles away from me.
Right.
Okay. That shouldn't be a cause of losing heart. Rather, one needs to focus, and this is where guru, a authentic guru can come in and say, let's look at what's the next step, right? And so we should always be thinking, what's my next step? We should be thinking about that daily. What's my next step? At any point, one can stop and ask themselves, what is the next step that I need to take, to move closer to self-realization, to move closer to divine love? And then we need to take that step.
I like that, Kaustubha. That is inspirational. You are inspiring me this morning.
Well, okay.
What is my next step? What is my next step?
And we should never feel like, I think you mentioned, I don't know if you borrowed it from another source or not. But,
of course. I do.
Okay, but like the idea.
I call it parampara. Others call it copyright infringement.
Okay, but the idea of like not being caught up on perfection, right? But what is it?
Progress, not perfection.
Progress. That's right, progress. So we see that.
Drop a heart if you like that, Kaustubha.
Drop a heart. Can you think of a place in the Bhagavad Gita where this plays out, Raghunath?
Progress, not perfection.
What? Yeah,
12th chapter, my friend.
There you go. Boom. That's right on it. Right. Yeah, where it's like it's described. There's a whole ladder. There's a whole gradation of ways to approach. Krishna comes out and says, "Here's the ideal." Right. Always fix your mind on me. Fix your mind, fix your heart on me. With it, be attached to me, and you'll easily cross beyond everything. But if you can't do that, that's all right. I wish I could do that, right? I wish my mind and my heart were always completely attached to God. But as I move through this world, I find, even though I try, it's not always like that. Well, then you can practice, the regulations of bhakti yoga, Well, what if I have trouble doing that? Okay, well, then you can offer your work to me. Then you can work for me. Like you work in other words, the practices of bhakti yoga mean read Bhagavatam, chant Mahamantra, this, that. I can't fill my day with that. I got too many others. I got all this work I have to. Okay, well, then work, but work in consciousness of me. Well, you know what? I go to work. I try to work in consciousness of you, but my consciousness is a million other. Okay, then work and offer the results of the work to me, right? I wish I could do that.
There's room for everybody at this table, Kaustubha. There's room for everybody. It's a house we're building. The entire world can live in.
No,
this is what bhakti is.
Huh? Yeah,
right?
Eventually what he expresses to Arjuna is that even if you can't work in consciousness of me, even if you can't work and give me the results of the work, then just work and give the results to someone. Like, in other words, become generous, become compassionate, and in the commentary to that verse, Prabhupada writes some very interesting things, really just about like, even on a platform that more Gyanis or yogis would look at and say, that's materialistic. Like, in other words, like, let's just say philanthropy in general, right?
Yes.
That even that, what it does is it prepares one for bhakti. Maybe I can pull this up. Let me see if I can find this, okay? If you can't do that, if you're unable to work in this conscious, then try giving up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. I think this is the.
I think the idea is there's gradations, and Krishna's just trying to give us any way so we can remember what we are. And it starts with just the very littlest thing, which is, all right, take something that you're making and give a portion of that away. It's just like just a little bit. So because what's materialism? Materialism means it's all about me, I, me, and mine, me first, and the gimmies, and first. What is it? Me, what was it? Me, I'm first, right? Me, I'm first.
Okay,
and it's not.
So what Prabhupada writes is, it may be that one is unable to sympathize with the activities of bhakti because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments, right? Like, I live in this family and I can't do this.
I've got this career, whatever.
if one attaches themselves directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members. I can't do this chanting. I can't read Bhagavatam all day, and so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that they sacrifice the accumulated result of their activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there's special work in which the results of one's previous action may be applied. Thus, one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge, right? By becoming detached, by giving, knowledge is arising, right? And it is found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti, gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, they give up the hard-earned results of their activities. One is sure that he says, this is also recommended because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify their mind gradually. And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand bhakti, right? So in other words, you need to, at the very least, even if you're locked into this world where it's just so hard, at the very least, you need to begin to act a little bit selflessly rather than selfishly. You need to start to think about others, because that is the nature of the soul, is to serve, right? Is to love, which means I'm thinking of others before myself. So even if I'm just like taking and giving, donating to some good cause, it helps me understand what bhakti is. So it's a good step. It's a step forward.
It's the design of the material world is to make us realize that it's not all about me. And if you think it's all about you, you just got to put in your time in the material world, and slowly that paradigm gets cracked, right? I thought it was all about me, and then I got married. And if you're in a marriage and it's still all about you, hey, pop out a couple kids. Then all of a sudden, there's nothing more like cracking of the ego than when you got to wake up for a kid who's crying, or the kid's got colic, or the kid's throwing up at night, and you're just, you have to become completely I thought I was selfless as a brahmachari. It's nothing. It's nothing until you have a little baby, or a couple little babies, or a handful of little babies like Cam Finn and his 5 children over there in Maine. Every day we add another child to Cam Finn.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that's the point. What are the lessons that we're meant to learn through life? We're meant to learn that, it's also there in the Bible, right? It is more blessed to give than it is to receive. We're meant to learn that lesson, and the world is showing us that lesson. And the world's showing us that even like when we become really successful, thinking only of ourselves, and we gain wealth, and we gain prestige, and sexually, financially, socially, we're thriving, we find there's still an emptiness there. And that's this world showing us, and if we think carefully, what was the most meaningful time in my life? If we look back and say, what time of my life was the most important and meaningful? Generally, we'll find that it was when we were giving the most to serve others. It's not necessarily when we got the new job, or we this, that, or that. It's when we were serving.
That's probably why the ashram time was so special for us, because you felt part of a collective community moving towards a positive goal.
That's right.
In this case, like worshiping God, but and we take any type of bedding or food situation. We're just like ready to go out for the cause, like being in the army almost, except for God, except killing or loving God.
Well, people say that all the time, right? Like, those years in the ashram, that was the most important time of my life. That was the most special time. Those are the best years of my life.
And that's why we're creating Ashram Month at the farm this year.
Oh, there we go.
There's a little teaser. Ashram Month. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, we're having an ashram month where you can feel what it's like to live in an ashram. Who's in? We're going to announce it soon.
That'll be like beginning like August 8th or something like that, right?
Something like that. After like the first few days in August.
Yeah. That'll be great.
It's a great idea. It's ashram 2.0. It's like all the benefits of the ashram, but you can get out of it. Like when we got into the ashram, it was sort of like, when do we get out of this? It was sort of like forever. It's forever, I think. There was no exit strategy.
That's right. Oh, we lost him again, Mara. Mara, do we have any takeaways?
We do. Can you
While
get
the
it
man
together?
is giggling off on the side, do we have any takeaways from today's show?
Act externally in a way that's aligned with the soul's true nature.
There you go.
Smooth out the dance between the soul and the ego.
Smooth it out.
How you relate to others can ease your distress.
Mm-hmm.
When you expect accolades or being a drum major, you set yourself up for disappointment.
Thanks for that memory.
Is that true?
You shared it. Devotees build you up, not take you down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Be equipoised in disappointment, not bitter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the next right step towards self-realization?
What's the
Yes.
next step?
What's the next right step?
Think selflessly to move towards bhakti.
That'll do it.
And
Yeah.
play piano for Krishna.
One way or another.
How about drum major for Krishna? How about that?
Oh, hey,
Krishna
by the way,
Marching band. Imagine that with their dhoties,
incredible.
high stepping, and their
I'm
socks.
imagining it now.
We could do it.
No, we should
Twirling a big
mention.
mace like Bhima had.
We should mention that tomorrow morning we're going to have Niranjana Swami on the show, who is the GBC, this representative for Ukraine. He's a person that's really given his life to serve the people of Ukraine, and
You know,
he'll be
he's-
giving us updates on what's happening there, and hopefully we'll also have updates on ways that if you'd like to, people can help.
He's a wonderful person. I love
Special
him.
person, yeah.
And he's a great singer too.
His music his kirtan is like. There's definitely something very otherworldly about it, right? It's just like
You know what? It's not like, hey, check me out. I'm a singer. I'm going to make this Krishna CD. It's not like that.
yeah,
It's
no,
like,
no.
I'm just going to sing because, that's what we do. We sing. And it's beautiful.
Yeah,
We gotta find some of that,
power.
right?
Yeah.
It's a power in like an authenticity and
You know,
yeah, I love it.
He's a big guru with like thousands of disciples, but he's totally unpretentious.
He's not
Right.
pretentious. He's
Yeah.
sweet like anything.
Yeah. Anyway, he'll be here tomorrow morning.
All right, great. I'm excited. I love him. And he's one of those people I don't see very much. But when I do, it's always very sweet. Thanks everybody for joining us. Woo! And I hope I see you tonight at 7:30 for some Ramayana.
Wow.
I'm changing. I'm bettering myself.
Thank you, Raghunath. I've only said it because I wanted to help in some way.
Oh, Krishna. I did this big kirtan in Haridwar, and everybody was singing, everybody was dancing. It was like, hundreds of people just singing and dancing. And some sadhu came up to me and he goes, "It was very nice, but it's not Ramo, it's Rama."
Oh, that hurts.
I was like, ooh, ouchie.
This is very nice, but
It's very nice, but.
what did you say? How did you respond?
I said, Lord Krishna understands my heart.
Did you?
I did say that. That's
He said,
true.
and I do as well.
It is true. Lord Krishna understands my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to pronounce it properly.
No, it means Lord Krishna understands your heart.
I know.
Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want, because there's a God who's all knowing. That's
and
what it
everybody's
means.
different.
Because everybody's different in this world. We can't try to monocrop the devotees.
That's right.